My sprint power really outclasses my FTP. So he goes in and shares like a handful of things as far as like his 5 second, 20 second, and everything else. But actually, before we get any further, this is a really good point. Sometimes, especially when I was new at racing, I thought that too. But number one is just because I hadn't done a lot of structured training, so I hadn't built up a lot of aerobic base. I had just been doing a great job at going really hard for random Strava KOMs, right? So like, of course, like that's what the numbers said, but it really wasn't that my sprinting was exceptional. It was that the rest was bad in my case, right? Like, but relatively speaking, it seemed really great. So that's just as like a different perspective on the same matter, Chris. He says, however, whenever doing any event, I find that keeping pace with my group really softens me up. And when I go for preems, I'm only able to generate 60 to 70% of my max sprint. And on top of that, when I'm done, I'm completely gassed. Same could be said for sprints. And for those that don't, do you want to explain what a preem is, just in case people don't know?
Preem is like an intermediary lap prize during a crit race where the next person to cross the finish line on the following lap gets something. Anything from water park tickets to $10 or pizzas, tires.
We used to have water park tickets that got handed out here before I was a dad, and now they don't have them. One of the greatest sad points of my life. Like if they had that, then I would like have this family-driven justification to go around and spin circles in an industrial park in the middle of the week.
Honey, I got tickets.
Exactly.
We're going to Wild Waters this weekend.
Yes, we're doing it. But alas, it's not there anymore, sadly. So that's what preems are. And in this case, Chris says that when he goes for preems or goes for anything else, because he's been trying so hard to hold in with the pack, he just doesn't have the gas that he wants to have, right? If I go too hard, I'm 100% guaranteed to be dropped when the group catches up to me. That's the thought process there. So obviously, I'm still trying to shed some weakness and improve my cycling profile in every category, but I'm looking for some advice on training sessions I can do to help with hard anaerobic efforts and recovery, or at least be able to drop just down below FTP so that I can stay with a group or keep a lead. So first things first, I'll talk about the specific workouts, and then I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't just do those specific workouts.
Yeah,
so
those aren't. Yeah.
So there are workouts that will appear like they will build what you need for that sort of thing, and they do work as long as you have many other pieces in place, right?
They're not sustainable.
Yes.
Like you're not going to keep getting benefits.
Yes. So they more sharpen the blade, so to speak. So workouts that I'm talking about, and producer Tucker will show them now. Bear, Hawksbill, and Wolf Jaw. These are all in the TrainerRoad catalog. And if you can see it right now on the screen, some people refer to them as billats. And basically...
these aren't billats.
Well, that's what some people refer to them, to
They're
that
wrong.
sort of structure as. Yes. So basically what it is it's hard. It's like take an over-under, make them much more frequently, and then stretch the ups to be higher, and stretch the overs to be higher, stretch the unders to be just slightly lower. So we're talking like 15 seconds on, and we're talking on, we're like 120, 130%, somewhere around there. And then it's 15 seconds, your under there is going to be somewhere around like 85, 90%, right? And then you repeat that for 6, 7 intervals, and that's a set. And then you repeat those sets. Then there's other ones like Richardson and Zalabu, and those ones will have like a hard start to them, and then they go into that same sort of structure. So when I first started, I thought in my mind, like, this is what I need to do, because just like you, Chris, I was getting dropped, and I thought, well, I'm an incredible like short power person, and I'm getting dropped, and maybe I just need to do exactly what I do in the race, and that will make me better. But it didn't work. And I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that a big misunderstanding between like anaerobic efforts, you tend to treat them in your mind, especially when you're new, as being entirely separate from aerobic efforts. And you think that, well, if I'm good at sprinting, like I should just be fine, but you don't realize the fact that your ability to repeat efforts is entirely aerobic. Like that's what it really comes down to. So it's one of those situations where the warning, or I guess the problem sign, or whatever you see to be the problem, isn't the actual problem. It's a symptom, not the cause, right? And in this case, really, it comes down to more aerobic fitness and higher threshold. Like makes everything easier, right, Nate? Like,
this is what I think we probably all experienced it here at 3.2, 3.3, depending on your age. There is probably room to grow, and there is a point where you're doing your intervals, and you probably you're lucky if you've experienced this, where you go, this used to be my VO2 max power, and I'm doing it at sweet spot, right? I used to hold this for like 2 minutes, and now I'm doing it for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that is the best feeling. And at 75 kilograms, like if you're a, Chris, I'm assuming you're a man, and you're below 40, there's probably a good chance that you could get up to 4.2, right? So
somewhere
getting
around
75 more watts, right? Think about that would do for your race.
Yes.
And 2, this is a thing, that like people get confused about all the time. Well, there's two things. One, it's not like everyone just chills and then there's a sprint. Yes. And like your sprint power that you do at on your training ride is not what you can do in a race. Mm-hmm. And the more aerobically fit you are, the less that's going to drop off. Mm-hmm. And you've seen like the UNR crit. I've won a race against Reno's best sprinter, Jose. And Jose does well in Masters racers in NorCal. He's a legit sprinter.
Very good.
And because it was such a hard race, I beat him on an uphill sprint, and he's
lighter than you.
200 pounds lighter than me. Approximately. Something like that. Approximately. But because, and Pete said, a sprinter on the ropes is way different than a sprinter that's fresh.
Yes.
And that's, Cavendish used to say this too. He's like, people don't realize I'm doing like 600 watts for a minute and then doing my sprint, right?
Yeah. And everything else that's led up to that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then 5 hours before that.
Yeah.
And Sagan too, whenever the race was hard, I say was because he's not as good as he used to be, but when he was really good, he would do really, really great in the races that were extremely hard because he's aerobically fit, and then he would outsprint everybody.
Yep.
When he was going against Kittel and it was perfectly flat and an easy stage and there's maybe like a hard last 5 minutes, he wouldn't do as well.
Yep.
But when it was hard, man, other people's sprint power, they dropped off and his stayed high.
Yep.
The final point is sometimes you don't even need a huge sprint to win. I've seen Jeff Linder and Chris Reichert, who are Jeff Linder's NorCal Cycling. Check out his YouTube videos. And Chris Reichert from NorCal.
Mike Spikes is the team, and he's also on some of the videos with Jeff there.
Yep. I've seen both of them win sprints with sub 1,000 watt sprints
against hitters, against like
real
strong
sprinters.
Real riders.
Yeah, people that national level cyclists in Northern California, and it's only because they both have big sprints, but it's only because the race was so hard. They of course timed it right, and they put so much energy out to put themselves in the right spot where the less sprint got them the win.
Yeah.
And you see those numbers, and on YouTube, you're like, "Oh, I can,"
That's what the
Chris
comments
looks
say
at that
for
and goes,
sure.
I can do that. I can do that kind of
say.
sprint. So therefore, I can beat Jeff Linder or Chris Reichert in a sprint.
Sure.
But it's not the case because you are there. You got to look at the whole race before that and being gassed into it. So, Chris, what you got to do? You got to raise your FTP. You got to have a higher watt per kg in order to be able to use your sprint. And unless it's just an easy ride.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. And the aerobic stuff will help after you raise your whole foundation or your anaerobic stuff. And you can kind of, that's in specialty phase where you kind of like fine tune, as Jonathan said. But right now you got to build a big blade. You got a switchblade, you need an axe.
Yeah.
And then you sharpen that axe, and then you're going to be really dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah, and one of the things is as you get fitter, you'll realize that you will only use 80 or 90% of your sprint most of the time. You won't use 100%, and so when you get done sprinting, it won't feel the same as it feels now.
Yeah.
It totally changes the way sprinting feels, and going for intermediary things or even attacking. All of a sudden, it's not, I went as hard as I possibly could, and I'm totally blown, and I'm going to get dropped. I only used 75% of my sprint on that one. So now I feel really good, and I'm ready for the next one.
Yeah. There's also, when it comes down to, and this is kind of straying a bit, Chris, but when it comes down to winning a sprint, unless you are a protected rider with a full lead out train and this is the strategy, you should not be worried about saving yourself for that final bit. You should be placing much more priority on getting into the right position.
Yes.
Like it's just it's hard because whenever we see sprint finishes, we think of the Tour de France and we think of like this well-marshaled lead out train where that's absolutely the case, but still that protected rider is still having to work really hard to stay on that wheel. It's just never the case where we basically like it's in a sprint workout where you're just like, fresh, let me recover as long as I can, and then I sprint,
You should also know when to spin around that wheel that you followed.
Ouch.
You should try that.
Check our YouTube. What's the video called again?
I followed the wrong
wheel. You followed the right wheel. I think that I followed the right wheel. I just didn't sprint when it was time.
I just blew it.
You would have been first into that. You could have been inside corner.
I know.
Or I think what Zach said is, I think a little bit of gap. You could have sprinted into him.
Yeah.
And his draft is like a semi truck. We're talking about.
It's nice.
It's nice. Brennan's the
Brennan
480
Hauser,
watt
I think is the name.
FTP gold medalist, junior world champion.
Rower.
6'5", 205 pounds.
Yeah.
Was Jonathan's lead out in the last turn. Jonathan just sat behind his wheel.
Yeah.
He never went. You didn't go around until other people passed you.
And we talk
Sorry,
about this
John.
in the video, and you should check out the video for sure. But we talk about this in the video. Like I tried to hunt for as many cues as I could, before the race. Also, like for the past 3 days, or 2 days, I just been destroyed by this person. Like he beat us by a minute. He beat me by 3 minutes on a road bike in the TT. Like
And you had a TT bike.
and I had a TT bike. And then in the road race, like he was out climbing everybody still, and he was just doing things at will. And
At 205 pounds.
at 205 pounds, so it was just like, okay, like this guy's. And then I asked him, and he's like, yeah, I want to win the crit. I was like, cool. Then during the warm up, he just kept practicing sprints over and over, and I was like, the dude's gonna sprint. And it was like, it seemed so clear, and it almost seemed irresponsible to think of another option because it had been hammered over the head for the past like 2 days. This dude is unbeatable. And
Zach said in the video, he even went from the drops to the tops
I know.
at the end, and you still didn't go.
I know.
He's like pretty much sitting up. He's like, I'm not.
So
He's
bad.
going to go still.
Yeah, he's gonna go. I'm just
I
waiting.
can't wait for him to
But
sprint.
if he would have
If he
went,
chose to go,
he would have sucked you around. He would have sucked you till like 200 because you're a very poppy sprinter.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're waiting for. Suck to
Yes.
200 meters to go, pop around.
If
10 pedal
he
strokes,
hadn't
done.
sat up, it would have been, all of you would have been going like, what an amazing sprint. It worked out perfectly, right? So,
It's way more fun this way.
but it is a lot more fun. If you like that video, subscribe to our channel and give it a like and even a comment down below.
If you want to check out more race analysis videos, click on me.
And if you want your coaching questions answered, click on me.
And if you want to become a faster cyclist, head over to TrainerRoad.com.